Yes. All right. Welcome everybody to Creating Community Through Technology. I am LaShondra McCarty, and I am looking forward to our time together. So I realized that, technology kind of is pushing congregations forward in a way that a lot of people probably did not anticipate, and that is greatly due to COVID. However, not everybody who is currently watching you from home is watching you because of COVID-19. The reality is there were some people who needed to engage that way, but just couldn't before because many churches weren't offering it. So you have people who can't get to service because it's during the time when they actually have to work, or they may be hospitalized. We have military members who would normally hope to be able to engage, but once they're actually deployed, can no longer stay connected to the congregation that they're with. So there are various reasons why offering an online opportunity for people is actually a really good idea, even if it comes with a slight learning curve of how to actually figure out how to do worship in a space that isn't physical. So one of the things that I mentioned, and I hope you guys took to heart, is that we are going to really dig in and come up with some action plans for you so that when you walk away from this experience, you have some steps that you can actually take to implement some of these things. And so my first question to you is, what services, gatherings, or meetings does your congregation currently host? And that could be, of course, your regular service, your Bible study, women's groups, down to any outreach ministries that you have, or youth meetings, anything like that. I would like for you to actually think about what your calendar looks like and create a list of those things. And we're actually going to do that now. And after, I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that. And after you write out your list, we're actually going to work through how to actually incorporate technology in those particular opportunities. So if you have some paper, so can all of you see this whiteboard on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I want you to jot down your events in this whiteboard. Your events, your meetings, or any gatherings that you hold.
So we write on it?
Yeah, you can write on it. So to the left-hand side, you have options of what you can do. And you can use that T, which is the text tool.
Oops.
Holly, what did you want to share?
Yeah, I was trying to update, but it will not allow me, I guess, because I'm using it right now. We, of course, Sundays our holiday, liturgical holidays, plus our Holy Week community service. Excuse me. We have the women's groups, the men's groups. Now they're not meeting in person as far as I know right now, but of course our green chalice, which we're doing a lot of that through email. We do have a food pantry on site, and we host a pet blessing every year. We have a prayer garden that is on the on our property. It's open to the community. So there are some times that we will have things out in that prayer garden, some scheduled, some just kind of last minute. But Pat, you may have thought of some other things. That's what I wrote.
I feel like I missed one of yours. I was trying to capture them all. Ms. Pat, was there anything else you wanted to add?
The blessing of the animals.
David, did you have anything? She representing a different congregation.
I tried to write and it seems to have disappeared, or I couldn't quite. We have a couple of Sunday school classes for adults and a divorce support group and a grief support group. A daily Bible study, Boy Scouts, we have a movie night once a month. And a lunch bunch once a month, where I'll go out and eat together.
And I'm not sure who wrote this. Tanika, did you write this? Wednesday night fellowship, 4th of July celebration.
No, I wrote the one that says Bible study, clothing ministry, outreach ministry. Do you see that? No.
No. Oh, I see it up there. Move it.
LaShondra, I was the one that wrote the 4th of July, VBS, Wednesday night fellowship.
Okay. And I jotted down the remainders. Wednesday night Bible study, the celebration for the high school graduates, which I think is top of mind because that's what's happening right now with a lot of them. And the Sunday service and finance meeting, which is held every year, but usually not available online. So let me ask, as some of these can't be, translated into something online, but are any of these being offered online as well? In any iteration?
Our Sunday services, a lot of our holidays, blessing of the animals, the plant blessing. The only one I think on that list would be the women's, men's, and Holy Week. And that was, I got asked to video our Holy Week, but the question of consent came up because we have a lot of people from other churches, and there were some that had voiced that they did not want it to be video or cast out. So, but yeah.
We
Okay.
actually offer our centering prayer. Since I first arrived here in September 2020, we've been offering centering prayer on Zoom, and that's done very well. Our Sunday morning services, both traditional and contemporary, are online as well as in person. So I feel pretty good about that. But unfortunately, some of our book club sort of gave them the option of whether they wanted to be online, and they decided they wanted to be in person. So.
Okay, that's good. So my goal was a few. One, for you all to see what some of the other congregations may be doing. Two, for those of you who are sharing these experiences virtually, for people to know that it can be done. And my third was for you to actually start thinking about how some of these actually could be translated into online space. So for the book club, as you know, could be either way, and it could also be hybrid. VBS could be done online. Actually, pretty much everything could be done online. Let's talk about that. So if you are looking at your Sunday morning service, and a couple of you had jumped in who weren't on before, your Sunday morning service, are you doing via Zoom or are you doing via Facebook or StreamYard?
We're doing ours through Facebook Live.
Okay,
And we also, we have a recording that we're uploading onto YouTube as well, because for some reason we have members that seem to be reluctant to be on Facebook Live. So we're doing that as well.
are they currently on Facebook? Those members?
I
who are
don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know. There seems to be some negative PR about Facebook, or a feeling about Facebook, whereas people are more comfortable in saying, okay, well, even though we don't get it uploaded onto YouTube until Tuesday, they're willing to wait until Tuesday to go on YouTube. But right now we're doing live stream, Facebook Live for both our service on Sunday mornings.
Okay,
We record the worship service and then upload to YouTube and then share it to Facebook. We have a lot more viewers on YouTube. We have a lot of people who just don't do Facebook, period.
Glenda, how are you sharing?
Pardon me?
How are you all sharing your services?
She and I are
The same, I'm with First
Okay.
Christian Church, so
Can you hear me?
yes, I said, I'm with Pastor Flowers. I'm also with First Christian Church.
Okay.
So we're doing Facebook Live and streaming online.
We have ordered equipment to be able to do worship live. We already have a building that has a place for cameras, and there'll be operable cameras, for good shots. And but it's supply chain, pandemic, whatever. It's on a crate and a ship somewhere, and we haven't gotten the equipment yet. And we're already reordering worships for the live audience, which mainly includes not doing prayer, joys, and concerns, which are pretty private, and you don't have permission to do that.
Right.
So we cut that part out and trying to figure out how to do that.
And we're actually going to talk about that some too, because that is a part of the community aspect. It'll just have to shift outside of broadcasted worship. Okay, so of all of the things that you mentioned, let's talk about how we can actually translate some of these things. So for your Bible studies, everything, you're not going to be able to do everything via live stream on Facebook, because as David said, even with the joys and prayers, that feels private. And sometimes sitting in Bible study, people end up sharing things that are also really private that they don't want broadcast. But you could actually still hold a Zoom for those particular things so that they can share within smaller groups. And if you wanted to, even within Zoom, you could actually do some breakout groups that will allow people to still have conversations with one another and feel like they're in a more private setting, even though it's digital. And the whiteboard, though it is a new feature for Zoom, maybe something that you want to utilize so that people can share in a shared space. Another thing that you could do if you wanted to get people's opinions and that all share at the same time is use Google Docs, which will allow people to chime in into a shared document. It would just be outside of this platform. So they would have to push this aside and then go to a link that you would share with them that they would then be able to access and comment in.
I have a question for you about Zoom's whiteboard. Now, for example, the things we just listed, are we able to get a copy of those, or is that pretty much up to the administrator?
So even though I'm not the admin on this account, just logging into my account let me create the whiteboard, and I can just share that with you guys. So if you want it, I could click share and it would be sent to you as well with the edits that we actually just made.
Okay,
And I have the option to email it to you as well.
all right,
Did you want it?
sure. One thing I did notice when I was working on it, it was that if you weren't careful to place your text, in a particular place on the whiteboard, you wrote over someone else, or they wrote over you.
Right. That's true. I noticed that as well. And the spacing was a little bit off to me as far as the size,
Mhm.
like, and that may be something to play with, but well, that isn't doing it. But when I started to type, some of the text boxes ended up being really elongated.
Okay,
I dropped the link in that would give you access to this particular thing, but I will also take a screenshot of it and have that emailed out.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so when we want to share our information, this is a couple of things that we can do. For like your divorce support group, they could actually be a Zoom meeting as well. And it would be easier if everybody was on Zoom than if you were actually doing a hybrid event. But the context in which we live, I'm sure you're having a little bit of both of these things happen. Let me go back to my presentation. Okay. So with our online only events, your main points of consideration are going to be your technology continuing to work, which is why having the access of uploading your actual services is great. Another thing that could come up for you is keeping track of your comments. For those of you who are sharing on Facebook and YouTube, you're probably experiencing already when people are sharing what they're thinking or how they're feeling about the particular service. That is fine, but that means that you're also leaving yourself open to people who may not be as kind. And whenever you are doing that, just be aware of moderating those comments. Just because they put them there doesn't mean they have to stay there. And within YouTube and Facebook, you can actually go in next to the comment and delete that comment or hide that comment so that people don't see something that is inappropriate. For the most part, it seems to be fine, but every now and then you may see that somebody's trying to sell something, or somebody is not isn't in the space for the best reason, and you are within your rights to actually not have that comment stay there. Another thing that you would want to take into consideration is having people who are moderating, one, be trained to do it, but also have that responsibility be more than one person. Because life happens, and you may have somebody who isn't available, or somebody who may not catch a comment, or maybe not even like actually doing it, because moderating does take some work and effort. So have more than one person be in that role. And that person, of course, if you are a pastor, that person cannot be you, because you will be up during the service. So make sure that somebody else isn't able to do that particular role. And their role is actually going to be really important, because people who are experiencing worship online don't have the benefit of sitting in a room next to somebody. There is a piece of engagement they're just not going to have. And that moderator can give them the opportunity to have somebody who's connected directly with the ministry engage them. Otherwise they may not experience it. So when they're watching you online, it's not the same as watching TV. You don't expect for anybody to talk back to you if you're saying something to your television. But there is a different level of expectation when somebody is engaging online, because when you're online, when you're on Facebook, when you're on YouTube, you are getting engagement back if it's live. Now, if it's a recording, that expectation isn't there. However, if somebody comments on an event or a recording after it is already done, you will get alerts about it, and you can go back and respond to that person. And if it's a question, it's really important that you do, because they're using you as a source of information. So our hybrid events, even though a lot of people are opening back up, there's still people who are not willing to be face-to-face. There are also some people, as I mentioned before, who could not have engaged you before. What a lot of congregations have seen is that some of the people who are logging in may have never stepped foot into the congregation. And so if you decide that you're not going to engage, or you're not going to up level, you may end up losing those people. And then there are also those who may have moved away, but now they can engage you because you're offering service in this way. So when you think about how you're structuring your services, keep those people in mind. And it sounds like everybody is broadcasting from their congregation. And so this will become a matter of how you stay in contact with those people when they're not online. So if you're doing additional meetings, making sure that you actually include a way for people to log in, or to encourage them to get on your email list so that you can contact them if you don't want to put this broadly out. Hey, we're having a meeting on Zoom, which I wouldn't encourage unless you're watching who's coming into the room. But if you intend to continue to offer other services like some of these meetings, put that in your broadcast that is occurring, and then give people a way to contact you. For example, when you do, what we would typically do is morning announcements. You're probably not saying everything at this point, but you could do a slide with the announcements, or you can say them verbally if they don't last too long. And then just say, if you want to participate in the online Bible study, or if you want to participate in the blessing of the plants, this is when it's going to be held. And if you would like details on how to log in, email us at, or join our email list. Now, if you say that, then you actually have to do it, because they're going to follow those instructions, and you want there to be a system in place to actually catch those people. I would encourage you to grow an email list, so that for those who aren't on Facebook, who won't automatically get those alerts, or those who don't log into YouTube on a regular basis, you don't want them to end up missing something just because they weren't on the platform. If you have an email for them, then you can actually reach out to them, even if they haven't logged in, and tell them about additional opportunities to engage the ministry. So church worship services have a lot of what I'm calling for this particular exercise, common moments. One is offering. When services are offered online, people are not in the room to catch that offering plate. And that means that if you don't have a way for them to give online, then they may not have an opportunity to give. And that is a part of worship. So if you're not using an online tool, I encourage you to use one. It could be something as simple and widely used as PayPal, or you can use an app like Tithely. I will drop that link in later. That will actually allow people to give recurring donations, but give them an opportunity to give. If nobody gives, fine. But don't take the opportunity away from them by not offering it. If it only comes up as, okay, now put your offering in the offering tray or mail it in, it may not actually happen. Another thing that you have to be aware of, particularly those who are leading worship services, is verbiage that you're not accustomed to saying. And most of these examples that I'm going to give you are around things that have to be said. And if you're not used to saying, if you want to give online, you have to remember to incorporate that as an offering option. The next one is prayer. So in congregations that are a little bit smaller, sometimes more family oriented, people will have a moment where they can voice what their prayer concerns are. And online, people may not want their personal lives or their issues or their surgeries mentioned publicly. So there will have to be some shifting, because you don't want somebody to come back and say, did you say that on Facebook Live? That was private, or that was personal, or I was just telling you that. So this is, I know, a sensitive area. And so the options are to do a more open prayer, like, you know, for all of for the prayers that have been unspoken, or for everyone who is currently experiencing, and then you can list out the experience, but not necessarily the name, and not so specific that people feel like you're talking about them directly and sharing it with the world. But another option for those who just really want to hear their name spoken is to offer some small group prayers digitally, and setting up, you know, either they can come and talk to this particular deacon, or setting up prayer time online where they will have the opportunity in a smaller context to say what their prayers are, or put them in the chat and have somebody actually pray over them. Now, if for those who want to do it another way, they actually could, if you are not the one saying it from the pulpit. For example, if you were just having your service and say, you know, I'm going to pray for everyone who wants prayer. If you have a particular prayer concern and feel comfortable, you can put it in the chat, because you're not the one sharing it. If they want to share it that way, then that will be their call. But that could be an option of how people can have something, a sharing that feels more personal, without it actually coming from the pastor. Passing of the peace. How many of you do passing of the peace in your congregations? Maybe nobody now. How many before COVID was doing passing of the peace? I know things are a little bit different now. Passing of the peace is, you know, it's a part of going to service. And for some people, it may be the only time that they get to engage people. And when you are online, you of course are not hugging and passing peace. However, how can this translate online? Any thoughts?
So
We have just brought it back within the last month or a month and a half. And really up until now, I haven't really thought about, mostly I just say it, you know, let's pass the peace, and then we go down, and I will pass the peace to the people in, you know, watching from home. But other than that, there's not really I know that some people have started coming up and like speaking into the camera, wishing, and some people have started commenting on Facebook Live, like peace or hello everyone, stuff like that. But that's kind of what we do.
That's a nice incorporation. It's challenging to do. But when I like the people coming up to the camera because they get to see more than one face. I like that a lot. And yeah, you could give them the offer of, even passing the piece to other people who are online because they get to see each other's names. So they could say, pass the piece to, at whomever, and they could be building up a little community there, but it does give them an opportunity to participate. And the goal is to make them feel as included as possible, even though they're not in the room.
Our last regional assembly was online and we organized a passing of the peace. We got several individuals to record something and they were included, on the screen. And it occurred to me, everybody has a smartphone and a selfie. You can make a little passing of the peace and send it in, and collect
Right.
those and put them up.
Right.
I don't know what I'm doing.
You just did. So you
Just that, which is a great idea. And I mentioned later, which I'll just give a snippet of it, about the diversity of voices. So in doing that, you allowed other people who may not have participated, in the forefront before, an opportunity to, one, to be seen, to share, and to actively participate in the service, which engages people even more because they're now even more of a part of it as opposed to just being an observer. So our call and response, I know not every congregation does call and response, but for those of you who don't know what call and response is, it is the response in some congregations where, if the pastor is saying something and you're like really feeling it, that you actually respond back. And that could be an amen, a hallelujah, say that, just different things that would indicate that the message is resonating. And when you're online, nobody hears you say that. So, and you don't actually call for it. But one of the things that people can do is, of course, respond within the chat. Your moderator could put in a comment saying, does anybody relate to this, and give people an opportunity to engage. The goal of the engagement is for people to feel like they're a part of what's happening and for them to not like click off. How many of you have been in a service where somebody says, and turn to your neighbor or say to your neighbor? So if you are sitting at home by yourself, who are you talking to? And I'm not saying don't say that at all. It's still appropriate because there'll be people who are sitting in the congregation. There may be some people who are at home and they are sitting next to somebody watching the service. But an inclusion or a little addendum to, now turn to your neighbor, could be, now share online or type in the comment, say in the chat, Holly Joe, I'm just giving you something extra to say. Another common practice is invite people to come to service. You can still say that. And what the people online or your online congregation will be doing is, if they're on Facebook, they can actually host watch parties. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, if you are watching a live stream on Facebook, next to the video, you actually have an option to host a watch party where you can click on your friends and invite them to actually watch the same thing that you're watching at the same time. And when you share your comments, you actually share them amongst your group. So the invitation that your online congregation could be making could create their own little watch group within the platform. Or they could just you could just encourage them to send an invite to other people who are sitting at home who need an opportunity or a place to worship. Everyone is welcome. And then they could just share the link from there. You wouldn't necessarily have to do that, though it may not hurt, because YouTube as well as Facebook have it set up pretty seamlessly where somebody could share the link to your particular live stream from within the platform. Okay. What are you all doing when somebody wants to join the congregation and they're online? Okay, so I would say this, it's something to think about. Because when you make which I know not every congregation makes the offer to join, but some people may not know that there is an option to join or what to do if that is available. So one of the things that you can do is put it in your comments and pin it to the top. Have you discovered pinning? Okay, great. So you can pin it to the top and you can do this in Facebook as well as YouTube. And what happens with a pinned comment is that as other people are commenting, that particular comment stays put. It doesn't move in the feed as the rest of them do. But you could give them the option to join the church. And their next step could be what you decide, whether it's call here or email here. You may have a page on your website that outlines, what your church is, what you're about, what joining will look like for them. So it may take a little bit of thought of, if somebody is purely online, how does this look? And how do they get to engage? But give them the option to be a part, especially if you see that they're coming back. And once you keep up with them via email and see like how many times they're opening the email, then you'll know how engaged they actually are in the congregation. But you may be the only church for somebody. Professions of faith. If you haven't thought about this moment, because this is a very sacred moment. How are people making their professions of faith? When you do your call to discipleship and the person is online, how do they make the next step? And that could look very similar to the joining. By saying, if you would like to make your opening up your call to discipleship, for those of you who are online, call this number. And that way they don't get dropped. Or if you feel like, LaShondra, I don't know if I want to take on that. I don't know how to continue to walk with this person because they may be in a different context and it's not as close, and discipleship is another level. What you could do is have a conversation with them and get a little bit more information and see if there is a local congregation that you would like to refer them to if they want to go further in discipleship. But I would say to really think about what that would look like and give them the option, even if it's just them saying, I believe, and just giving them a space to do that. If you are already doing some Bible studies online, some discipleship classes online, that may be a place where you can roll them in so that they can continue to be engaged and grow and learn. Well, we're at our halfway point, and for those of you who weren't with me the last time, at our halfway point, I always gave a break so that you had a moment to digest and we could come back. And this is going to be your break time. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts in this moment? Or about anything that I just listed?
I have a question. With Facebook, of course, Facebook Live, it does give us some analytics, but is there a way to get in there and to get even more analytics about who's watching and where they might be? I mean, maybe not geographically, but to find out if people, because one thing that I was concerned at another church is it shows that X number of people viewed it, but then sometimes the same person may view it more than once. Is there a way to separate that out? That type of thing?
It will not go as deep as saying, this person watched more than one time. However, you could look into the analytics on that video and it would tell you the geography, and you could find out like where that person is specifically.
All right.
You start looking at the data, it'll tell you their gender, how long they watch for. You can actually see where people drop off, if they drop off.
Okay.
It shows you that as well. So you do end up with quite a bit of data on them.
Will you show us? I've not gone in there before to take a look. Will we have a chance to do that at some point?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay, great.
I'll write a little note for myself. You can see that, well, you're not on YouTube, but for those of you who are on YouTube, you can see some data on YouTube as well. You can go and see, how many minutes somebody watched and how long they watched too. So there's data there as well. And for those of you who, we didn't touch on this time, but for those of you who are playing copyrighted music, that licensing is really important, and making sure that you actually have permission to play the copyrighted music. Okay, so we are going to take our break. I'm going to give you until 7:15. And I look forward to seeing your smiling faces. Talking about digital church. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Like, yes. Yeah. There. Thank you, Holly Joe. See you guys soon. So now we're going to do something a little fun. I want you guys to participate. We're all going to participate. Yes, LaShondra. Yay. Thank you, guys. All right. So we are going to do a little bit of trivia.
Okay.
And I know that, this is not going to stump you all. So just put your answers over in the chat. The answer is false. What was the Bible written in? Anybody know?
Which version of the Bible? I mean, are we talking about the Hebrew Bible? Are we
We're
going
talking-
back to Arabic? Where are we?
So we got two languages so far.
Hebrew and Greek?
Original text.
Hebrew
Original
and Greek.
text. Yeah, Hebrew and Greek.
All right.
LaShonda, you're going to have to sharpen up your game for these seminary graduates.
Well, see, I did, because the point, I'll tell you what the point is after I do.
Okay. All right, never mind. I thought you were going to say King James was the version Jesus used. Okay.
Oh, and have you guys, you would run me off of this Zoom.
Okay,
All right, our next up, who got Joseph thrown into the prison?
Potiphar. Potiphar. I can't spell his name. I forgot.
It's okay, you don't have to spell his name.
Well, yeah, he got it, but yeah, you're right, Pat.
Here's our answer. Potiphar's wife lied on him.
Yes.
Then our next one. Which human author wrote the most words in the Bible? We got 2 votes for Paul. Paul did write quite a few books. Most words was Moses. Those were some long books that he authored.
But I thought that there was some debate about whether Moses actually wrote the Pentateuch, every book in the Pentateuch, because
Well-
he was dead after some of it was written and blah, 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 blah.
That is true that there is dispute, but if we go with Moses having written the Pentateuch, then he would get the most credit.
Okay, no problem. No
Okay.
problem, No problem.
I mean, there's debate over all of them, like who wrote Hebrews, because it doesn't sound like Paul, and it's one of my favorite books too. But
Oh,
so when you're thinking about engagement, also think about questions. Yes, even trivia. Because if nothing else, it got you guys laughing and everyone was having to engage in a different way. And it kept you from only absorbing information, but also participating in the conversation in the way that could actually be a little fun for you. So when you're thinking about people being at home and, how could you actually spur them to think in a different way, even try to incorporate some questions. And you could do some questions even for your Bible studies. You could do some questions that are just fun for people to get to know each other, to laugh a little bit, and to kind of break out of the mode of just listening. Many of us have been sitting in front of screens for, a couple of years now. And the more you do to kind of get people out of being in a passive role, the more they're going to remember, right? And the more they're actually going to zone in. If it's only one way, then people tend to have the tendency to look away or to be doing something else, and it might end up missing some really important moments. And I'm not saying necessarily, throwing a question or two in a sermon, though I'm sure many of you are already doing that. And sometimes you just do it in the midst of just sharing. But it is something to think about when people are waiting before the service starts, to have a couple of questions up that could engage them and spur them to be thinking about the moment. And they could be taken from the upcoming service. When you are doing your Zoom meetings, even the Bible study, and everybody probably has the Bible study in their hands or the books in their hands, but you could ask some additional questions that spur some conversation and discussion amongst the group, so that it's not only the person who was leading that is sharing everything. And the truth of the matter is that many of the rooms that we're in, there's wisdom in the room. So it gives people an opportunity to come with their wisdom and to share their contributions and their perspective. So our other ways that we can engage is, of course, if we're using either Zoom or Facebook. I think that you can do this in YouTube, but I would have to look it up. But I know that Zoom and Facebook both allow you to do polls where you can ask someone a question and they can answer immediately, and it tabulates the percentage of your audience this answers, so you can actually see where people stand. You can do questions, as we just did, that will engage people to participate and to stay engaged. Another thing is to actually ask them for comments. And that is, as simple as, hey, where are you joining in from? Would you type that in the comments? And that's one of the ways that you can get some of that data that you may be looking for is, where are you? And if you have been on any online trainings or seen any services, you probably heard people do that when they first log on, especially when they're on Facebook or YouTube, because when you're live, as Pat alluded to at the very beginning, you get an alert. The people who are following your page get an alert. So if you go live and then you immediately go into your message, then people may, once they get that alert and they go on, they may miss some of what you said because you started on the dot. So if you just take, a few seconds or maybe 30 seconds to a minute of saying, hey, everyone, I'm glad you're here, or start your live with a countdown of 30 seconds, which you've probably seen if you've seen StreamYard. It gives you a 30-second countdown before a little music is playing, and then it cuts out and goes to the live camera and people actually see what's happening. But what it does is it gives the platform an opportunity to send out that alert. It gives people a chance to go, oh, the live stream has started, and to actually get on. So, think about some of the intro pieces. And pastors, I am not giving this to you. I am giving this to whoever is going to be moderating for you, or whoever is going to be leading worship that day, as them being the ones to say, welcome to today's service. This is what we're going to be talking about today, or welcome to the service. Where are you from? We are live streaming from ... And just give yourself a little bit of time to get a little bit of information from people, and to have that live stream going long enough for your people to get an alert and not miss the meat of your message.
Excuse me, Lysandra, you mentioned a software package or something that you could do that countdown with.
Oh, StreamYard.
StreamYard. Okay.
I will send the link for that too. StreamYard is a streaming service that allows you to stream to multiple platforms.
Oh, okay.
So
Thank
you could have one PowerPoint slide, one screen up, and actually share your message either live or recorded to Facebook, LinkedIn, if you have the permission to do that. Everybody can't stream to LinkedIn, but Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. I feel like I'm missing one, but there's several platforms that you can stream to directly from StreamYard.
Oh, okay,
So
great.
it keeps you from having to, and you can download once you're done. So after you've actually done the broadcast, you can download it and archive it however you want, or put it in another spot, but it keeps you from having to try to finagle the stream, or, okay, we streamed over here, now I need to go upload in all these different places.
Oh,
But
fantastic.
I'll send that link. So reactions, in our exercise today, we didn't do any reactions, but we all, I think, probably know what they are. So, smiley face, sad face, thumbs up, thumbs down, celebration, fireworks, the wow with the head blowing off, those are all reactions. And you can even ask people for reactions, send me a heart if you like that message, send me a thumbs up if you like the song, send me a hand clap if you can hear me, send me a sad face if you can't, so you can actually spur people with those particular reactions to get them to engage. Our next thing is games, and this is probably underutilized. So I don't know if you know this, but in Zoom, there are also apps, and you can actually play games within Zoom.
Wow. No, I did not know that.
So there is a game that came out years ago. Ellen DeGeneres made up this game called Heads Up, and it was a game that you could play on your phone. Galena knows about it. It's on Zoom, so you can actually add it and play it through Zoom. You can play solitaire. But if you don't want to play one of the Zoom games, one of the ones that are actually attached to the program, you can do your own games. Like if you were doing a family game night and the family was your congregation, you could do Taboo. You could put people out in the breakout groups and have them play a game with one another, or you can play one generally, even if it was, first one to raise your hand answers, and you could play Jeopardy or pretty much anything that you can actually conceive, which is you looking at a screen, you can actually play a game. And I know that it's like, well, it's church, but it's not. Church is not, and we all know this, church is not just sitting in a pew listening to somebody talk. Church is also about fellowship. And so if we can come up with ways where people can fellowship with one another and laugh together and build relationships, then you're strengthening the church as a whole. So when you're utilizing technology, think about some of the fun things that can be done as well that will give people the opportunity to engage and have different types of conversations. We don't walk around only talking about Jesus. We have real life, and it's through other dynamics that people get to share a little bit more about who they are. There's also celebrations. I mentioned the graduation intentionally, that of celebrating graduates, so that we can think about how we actually celebrate online. Do we do a special thing and tell people, if it's your anniversary this month, drop it in the chat. How many years have you been married? Let's celebrate that. If you have a happy that you want to share, or what's your joy, let's celebrate that. Even if it isn't, monumental, but it still gives people an opportunity to share joy in a context that they may not be able to. You guys may be it. Your ministries may be it. There are some people who are logging on to churches who have never been to church. And that is mind-blowing. So think about how to pep that person up. We are in we're in an opportune time where, we have this charge to reach the world. And how some of us have interpreted it is by traveling across the world and sharing our faith with people and sharing Christ in us, so that they would see a reflection of God on earth. And now we are at this awesome intersection where there is our faith that has really hit technology, and people are open and hungry. And COVID has done a lot to make us pause and think, and it has also made us reflect on some things that are really important. And I think that people have found that relationships are really important, probably more than they were to them before. And that the next day is not always guaranteed.
Amen.
So we actually have the opportunity to reach people who may not have community otherwise. And there are some people who don't have community otherwise. So the more that we can do to utilize these platforms for a greater good, than people just being mad about the latest celebrity and slamming them on social media, is to make it a space where people can also share these pieces about who they are in safe spaces. And allowing for engagement would be one of the greatest ways to do it, so that they also get to build connection with you as well as the other people who are in the congregation. My next call to action is diversify. Big word right now. We're going to diversify. How are we going to do that? Okay, we're going to diversify the experiences. So I was so glad to hear that some of you are are doing, the Bible studies, and you're doing the blessings, and you're streaming those, because some people may not even know that that happens at some churches. And so you're giving them an experience they may not have even known about, or known even that even existed. But when you're diversifying your experiences, what would it look like if people were on Zoom and they were actually watching something together and then discussing it?
Hmm.
And it can't happen because the technology is allowing it. What would it look like if we said, hey, we're all going to get together and we're just going to sing some really familiar hymns together. We don't have to sound great. We're just having a different communal experience with each other. What does it look like if we just get on a call and catch up? Just people in the congregation just talking to each other, because they typically don't do that, especially if they're now distant, where they just have an opportunity to converse. It's still church. It's a different experience. And it's a new way to plug in. Because I don't know about you, have any of you ever been in a congregation and, you're just happy to get there on time because you struggle to get the kids dressed and out. And so you make it just in time for service to start. And you only know like the people that you sit around. If you sit in the same spot, if you move around, then you might not even know those people. You only have a couple of minutes to actually talk to them. And that may be like after the service is over. And then you walk out the door. And that's it. So you may go through service months and months at a time, and the only name you actually know is the pastors. So how do you change that when people have never even walked into the church and met the pastor? Is you offer them other ways to have actual conversation, and you have the opportunity to create deeper relationships that may not have been there or may not be there if you don't open up the possibility of them. Because some people, as soon as those doors open, when there was church, only church inside, as soon as those doors open, they would be lining. So think about how you can diversify those experiences. How can we do more fun things so that people have the opportunity to speak up where they may not normally speak up? Diversify the voices. Most of us, when we go to church, there will be somebody who would do the announcements. There will be a praise leader, or whoever was leading the choir would get up. You would hear somebody else pray. Somebody else would preside over the table. And some congregations that is still happening, and others, once the computer screen went up, it became the pastor from head to toe, doing everything. And I get it, logistically, it was probably easier, especially when all of this first started and you're trying to figure out the technology. But I would encourage you to diversify the voices. So if you are only doing Zoom, allowing somebody else to come up and do the prayer, and this person would do this part. If you are back in services, then either have your setup where everybody would come to like one spot at the lectern if you don't have two cameras, or have a camera person so that they can shift the camera from one side to the other, depending on how your pulpit is set up, of course. And if you have somebody at the lectern and you have somebody at the pulpit, you could just swivel the camera between the two so that there's more than one voice and they're not watching a static screen. The other thing that this does, other than, giving the person who's watching a visual diversity, is it gives other people in the congregation some ownership over a piece of the service. And it takes some things off of the pastor, but it allows other people to participate. And you'll be displaying the communal reality of a worship service. Now, for those of you who have live streamed, of course, people need to be aware that they're going to be live streamed and, you know, have permission to be broadcasted. That's really important. So diversify the opportunities. Now, in our little conversation between Joanne and myself, I found out some things about her that I did not know. And maybe some of you didn't know that either. And there may be members in your congregation who have backgrounds and gifts and talents, and they may be 3,000 miles away. What opportunity is available, or could you create for that person to share their expertise? As you heard Joanne saying how important, you know, the parish nurse is to the education of the congregation, particularly in a context where medical facilities and doctors may be few and far between. But there are probably some other people out there whose voices need to be lifted just so that you can hear their brilliance for the good of the congregation. Because we're not ministering to souls only. These are human beings who are dealing with things in life. And during this time you have, which even before this time, I was in congregations before, and some of them had like somebody come in and talk about financing, somebody come in and talk about education, being college ready, how to handle school. If you are a parent, how to handle, you know, things at the school level when you're going in and talking to administrators. I've gone to classes in church that were language learning. There was a member who started doing Japanese classes before the service started.
Wow.
Yeah. So think about some of the people who are in your congregation who may have something that they're willing to share, even some of your congregants online. What kind of classes could they host that could just be informative? And what it does is it allows them to participate in a different way. It'll be educating and informing the members who participate, and it will be giving them something to do with their gifts and talents that they may not have seen otherwise. So I'm encouraging you to kind of expand a little bit. And what I don't want you to hear is that I'm giving you one more thing to do, because there are probably some of you on this call who feel like I don't have the bandwidth for one more thing. And this may be a matter of just putting it out there and saying, you know, hey, we have this technology because you have it already. Most of you either have Zoom, or, you know, if you do a Zoom meeting that's less, actually, let me take that back. I think they got rid of that. Zoom was allowing you to do really short meetings for free. But even if they did like a Facebook group, and I know not everybody's on Facebook, but there are also some other platforms that have membership groups that a person could actually join into. But you could just put out there, is anybody willing to share, or what are your gifts and talents, or what are your skill sets, or what have you learned? Just finding out a little bit more about people and what they could teach, and then opening that up for them. And you may end up finding out that there are people who are interested in things that you may have been unaware of. I got really heavily into gardening when COVID kicked off, and I had never touched dirt before except to like wipe it off something. So, and then I got really big into like gardening groups and really paying attention to the movement of the bees, and just, I know, we have got to say the bees, they help our food, but there may be, you know, other opportunities for people to engage. And if I had discovered that there was somebody in the church that did that, I would have been all over them. So think about some of the opportunities that you can open up for people to share and even bond over. How many people were making bread and then discovered that there were other people who also like to make bread. And now they create this little community around an interest that would not have normally popped up in the context of church. So after that, my question to you is, how could your worship service be diversified? How many of you are still doing a children's moment?
We are.
Yeah.
And what does that look like for you? Is it, Joanne, are you doing the children's moment? Is somebody else coming up and doing the children's moment? Are they gathering around? What does that look like? Thank you for that honesty.
Sorry. Yeah, that was
No.
that was brutal. I know it was brutal.
This is what I would say. Children's moment. Having, which I'm not sure how you set up, but having it on her and encouraging her to also make note of the children who could be watching online, because there may be children who are watching that nobody gets to see.
Excellent.
And yeah, maybe not doing the call for the kids who aren't there, but the inclusion of those who may be watching. Before technology was where it is now, I participated in Disciples Net, which was an online disciples church that was led by Deb Phelps out of Indiana region. And we did, everything pre-recorded, and we would record and then like upload or send her files, and then it was edited into a full service, and everybody who was involved just kind of took a piece. And one of the things that I often did, because I had young nieces at the time, was I would include them in my piece. So I would do something and incorporate them. And it could be that I would be doing something around prayer, around Lent. And then Madison, who was my middle niece at the time, she was 8 at the time, I was 11 years ago, but she would do the prayer with me. So they would get me praying, and then the children would hear a child pray. And so maybe there could be, I don't know how old these children are, but just in general, an incorporation of other generations.
Okay.
Taking a piece of the forefront, so that when they're not as focused on how many kids, but that's a kid like me. Even during the times where we have watched services online, we're all sitting and watching together, but that's 2 teenagers and me and my husband. And very rarely do we see another teenager or somebody who is younger. But they're there. So, with the permission of their parents to be able to stream them, I have to say that, give them the opportunity to take a more active role in the service. And for the children who may be watching them to go, that's a kid like me. There may be, I think one of the driving forces behind Disciples Net was that we were always thinking about the members who could not get there.
Okay.
Who were in the hospital, and sometimes that member in the hospital is a child who is not just electing to not show up, but really couldn't get there. And so we want to offer them something more than the once a month visit from one member. So for all of you who are broadcasting and you're jumping out into this new arena, as difficult as I know it is sometimes to try to reshape something that you have been doing for decades and trying to figure out, how do I make people that I've never even seen a part of this? I say, keep pushing, keep trying it. You know, if it works like gangbusters, great. If it doesn't work, okay, then we'll try and do new technique the next time. But there are some people on the other side of these screens who are appreciative and thankful for your attempt, who would not be able to engage were you not trying at all. So continue to put the good word out there, because there are people who need it and who are appreciative of you giving it your all to be in a space that they can access.
It's almost impossible to do, but if you can get people to move and be in a different location, I mean, you can make a seating chart of where people sit in the worship service. When I was a layperson, I was intentional about not ever sitting in the same place twice. And the different perspectives you get and the different conversations you hear and different people you're around is empowering, but they will not move.
Yeah. And maybe from that context, it may be, I think this would work, but maybe you and a few other people who are willing to move just start shifting around the congregation every week. You know, not to rattle them, but just to have some different conversation. And then at the end of the experience, say, you know, this is why we were doing this. And they may never move, but if nothing else, they may notice you all taking they'll notice that somebody's
in their seat. Yeah.
Talking to them.
Well, they thought he was a visitor every week, you know, when he moved to the new section of the church, a different section. Yeah.
Are you serious?
No, I'm just kidding. No.
Okay. I was like, whoa, wait.
It was that crazy, David.
Sorry about that, David.
Trying to stir things up.
Yeah. Another thing that we used to do pre-COVID days is we would take like maybe 3 minutes before services started and have somebody announce and say, if you see a new face or an old face you haven't seen in a while, we would go and have like a little introductory time to where introduce yourself, welcome to church. Now it's more of a, you know, a fist bump instead of a shaking of the hand, but it would be nice if we ever could get back to that point again to meet new people.
Right. Yeah, we did that in a couple of congregations I've been in. And it is a nice moment.
As long as you're still not just talking to the same two people right by you.
True. So we have 2 minutes. Anybody have anything they want to ask? Okay. So here's your homework, because there's always homework, right?
No.
David, tell them. What? Okay. No, okay. This is not hard. You missed my announcement at the start of this. And if you don't come back next week, I'm going to find you. Okay. Okay. So here's my announcement. My announcement was simply this, that I want you to implement. That I don't want you to just come and write great notes. I want you to implement, and I would like for you to try things during our time so that if you have hiccups, then we're together and you can ask.
Okay.
That's it. So here's your homework. This is not hard, Glenda. This is not hard. I want you to try one of the things that I mentioned tonight. It could be from the diversify list. It could be from the from the inclusion in the common moments. And just next week, we'll start off with, how did that go? See? Harmless, harmless. The reason why I make that announcement is that I don't want people to get to the end and go, oh, this was great, and show me their notes. And then I go, okay, please go do something with that. I want it to be a very useful time for you all. So that's all I have. Painless homework. And that's how we'll start our conversation off next week. And if you need anything in between now and then, feel free to reach out. If there's something that you want me to touch on, if you give me enough advance notice, I will roll it in, as long as it's, related to community and tech. Like, don't tell me the day of, and I'll be like, I can't, I'm gonna have to get that next time. So just give me a little heads up so I can make sure that if I have to do any research, I have time to do so. But that's all that I have for you all tonight. Thank you so much. I hope that has been helpful, and I look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place. We're going to talk about that homework and our wonderful wins. Even if the win is that we learned, I don't want to do that again. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.